Human rights activists in Ukraine have claimed a Russian army officer, known as the Butcher of Bucha, commanded the unit behind the of hundreds of civilians. Lieutenant Colonel Azatbek Omurbekov was identified by InformNapalm, a Ukrainian group that monitors Russia's military and intelligence agencies. Over the past few days, grisly images of what appeared to be intentionalings of civilians carried out by Russian forces in Bucha and other towns before they withdrew from the outskirts of Kyiv have caused a global outcry and led Western nations to expel scores of Moscow's diplomats and propose further sanctions, including a ban on coal imports from Russia. Zelensky accuses Russian troops of worst atrocities since World War II. A green cross stands above an abandoned military vehicle position where locals buried 4 people on April 5, 2022 in Bucha, Ukraine. The Ukrainian government has accused Russian forces of committing a deliberate as they occupied and eventually retreated from Bucha, 25 kilometers northwest of Kyiv. Dozens of bodies have been found in the days since Ukrainian forces regained control of the town. The Ukrainian activists described Lieutenant Colonel Omurbekov as the military villain behind the Bucha. They claimed he commanded the Russian army's 64th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, blamed by Ukrainian government officials online for committing war crimes in Bucha. Lieutenant Colonel Omurbekov, a decorated officer, was blessed by the Russian Orthodox Church last November before his deployment to Ukraine, the Times newspaper in the UK reports. History shows that we fight most of our battles with our souls, he reportedly said following the service. Ukrainian activists claim they have identified the Butcher of Bucha, the Russian army officer behind civilian executions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused the Russians of gruesome atrocities in Ukraine and told the UN Security Council on Tuesday that those responsible should immediately be brought up on war crimes charges in front of a tribunal like the one established at Nuremberg after World War II. Fears of more flooding as rain threatens to explode. Advancing Ukrainian soldiers found the mass grave in Bucha, on the outskirts of Kyiv. Mr. Zelensky, speaking via video from Ukraine to UN diplomats, said that civilians had been tortured, shot in the back of the head, thrown down wells, blown up with grenades in their apartments, and crushed by tanks while in cars. They cut off limbs, cut their throats. Women were raped and in front of their children, he said. He asserted that people's tongues were pulled out only because their aggressor did not hear what they wanted to hear from them. Mr. Zelensky said that both those who carried out the ings and those who gave the orders must be brought to justice immediately for war crimes in front of a tribunal similar to what was used in post-war Germany. Ukrainian soldiers check for booby traps as they recapture the Kyiv suburb of Bucha. Moscow's UN ambassador, Vasily Nebenzia, said that while Bucha was under Russian control, not a single local person has suffered from any violent action. Reiterating what the Kremlin has contended for days, he said that video footage of bodies in the streets was a crude forgery staged by the Ukrainians. Associated Press journalists in Bucha have counted dozens of corpses in civilian clothes and interviewed Ukrainians who told of witnessing atrocities. Also, high-resolution satellite imagery from Maxa Technologies showed that many of the bodies had been lying in the open for weeks, during the time that Russian forces were in the town. Grim pictures show reality of life in Ukraine.